Yes, of course, just a countdown to 2023, October 1st. Two big events on the platforms of ITV Radio. Okay, let's get our discussion segment on. The ECOWAS 1 week ultimatum given to General Abdulrahman in Niger has expired. And the question is, what next? ECOWAS gave that ultimatum as a window for the coup plotters to retrace their steps and bring back the deposed leader in that country. But from all indication, it doesn't seem like they are ready to back down. As a matter of fact, efforts were made by Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to mediate in the matter and perhaps give the coup plotters a soft landing. We heard that former Nigerian head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, led some other highly placed individuals to Niger, but that didn't yield any result. As a matter of fact, they were only limited to the airport, and then they sent a low-power delegation to interface with the team sent by Nigeria. So you have at the level of ECOWAS and at the level of Nigeria, we even heard that the Sultan of Sokoto was one of those sent by Mr. President. And was such an embarrassing situation as the coup plotters, were not ready to listen to anyone or talk to anyone. But analysts are saying military action is not the best option in dealing with the Niger political situation. That's the thrust of our discussion today. I know that my colleague in Abuja is also standing by for us to have this conversation that is teeing off from our Benin Network studio. So let's get started with Christopher Ojekere, who is the Programs Officer, Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change. Chris, thank you a lot for coming on the program.
Yeah, good morning, Sonny.
Good to have you here.
Good morning, viewers.
All right, let's look at what's happening in Niger at the moment. Niger, interestingly, is a border country with Nigeria, and it was the country our immediate past president boasted to run to if we disturb him. I'm not sure he can do that right now. And we also know that the immediate past president made a lot of investments in Niger with the Maradi rail track or what have you that was constructed or being constructed to that country. Very, very interesting situation. But give us your perspective on the situation. The deadline has expired from ECOWAS. What next?
Well, I think there is much to give us embarrassment. I am surprised that ECOWAS should give such an ultimatum and made it within such a short time. What it shows and what it tells us is that proper security and intelligence situations and report wasn't gotten of what has happened in Niger. The depth of the acceptance of the coup and coup plotters, they didn't get enough intelligent reportage, coverage, or investigation. ECOWAS ought to have been armed with all of that so that they know what they are dealing with. When you are dealing with international situations, you should be able to get into the country and understand exactly what is in place so that when you are beginning to churn out your strategies and then you are beginning to churn out your timelines and your deadlines, you have all things at the tip of your finger so that you don't get this kind of international, embarrassment as ECOWAS is standing to face now. Now, the deadline has reached. The coup plotters are adamant. Are you going to go out on a full-scale war? First of all, ECOWAS cannot even go on a full-scale war without meeting up with a lot of international treaties with the UN supervisors. So what next? What next is that you now have to do the right thing. And that is that You have to find other ways, maybe appeal to more advanced nations of the world who have dealt with this kind of transaction and diplomatic interfacing to tell you exactly what next to do. You have to find ways to now reach the junta and find ways to negotiate with them. You were not speaking to one of the subunits of Nigeria as the chairman of ECOWAS to begin to give out those kind of orders. You are speaking to a sovereign nation, fully independent, that can take a decision. Have you found out what powers within the ecosystem of espionage and all that in the world that is behind them? Have you found out what connections and what deals they have signed with mercenaries? They are calling ECOWAS bluff and telling ECOWAS that they are ready to take ECOWAS on. If the ECOWAS should choose to be so unwise as to now initiate a military action. So it was a very wrong diplomatic move to have given that kind of, ultimatum. Now they now have to do the right thing. That's the way to go. The coup, like every other coup in Nigeria in the past few years, are becoming more and more popular with the populace. They have justifications that resonate with citizens of the country. And it is the ruling political class that provides those justifications. And they must understand that the military you are dealing with in Africa now is not the military of the 1960s, whose education was just military, command and control. You are dealing with young officers whose education now is more civil, or as civil as it is military. Our defense schools now are well versed in international politics and diplomacy, in strategic and policy planning. So you have exposed officers who, when they want to now embark on the coup, are not just rushing there like those armor and shoot and cock and shoot soldiers you had in the 60s. They would have done a lot of political transactions and a lot of political interfacing underneath, so that you don't just come out to threaten them. They know their rights within the international treaties. They know their rights in the UN. There's self-determinism, self-determination. They know all those ones. So the point is, the thing to begin to deal with, I know that is going to be in the long run, but should start immediately, is for African nations to begin to think of how to prevent coup by not providing justifications and opportunity for these young officers. So it is not an easy thing to just smash and bat out. No, they have to discuss. So it is going to have to take the way of dialogue. That government will be recognized because it has some degree of legitimacy, not conferred on it by law, but conferred on it by the response of the citizens.
But this is not a popular system of government, globally. I mean, democracy and the rule of law is what is popular. I mean, having coup d'etat and then taking over government forcefully is not a popular system of government. Yeah.
I don't even think the military think it's popular. The thing is, when you make peaceful change inevitable, you make violent change. When you make peaceful change impossible, you make violent change inevitable. When the desirable is not possible, then the possible becomes desirable. The people who were crying on the streets are not concerned with this your theory and rhetorics about what is popular and what is not popular. They're only interested on who will meet their needs. I'm a Democrat to the core. I don't support military coup. But I don't close my eye to causes and begin to discuss only effects. You will never find solutions. Because for every effect, there's a cause. So in Africa, the governments are hugely corrupt. I want to give you an example with Nigeria. I'm not advocating coup. But you know the economic situation Nigeria is in today. And that situation could be said to be triggered by the careless announcement on the day they were swearing in the current president. For as soon as he announced that subsidy has been removed, independent marketers held the country at the jugular and increased everything, and that has affected the economy today. Now, the more people are hungry, the more they are alienated from all the rhetorics that government is giving. And the more they are alienated, the more they are likely to take alternatives that they think that is going to take care of their needs.
Okay.
And if the Nigerian military is not the disciplined military that we have, this is just an opportunity. Because they will have full justification for it. So I am saying, now they are clearing ministers in the Senate. We are told by Channels TV after the investigation that the Senate, each senator goes on with about 29 million naira. Monthly. And when I watch it, when they are advising the minister, they say, I hope you won't go there and do this and do that. Nigerians are suffering. We are looking for those who will meet the needs of Nigerians. And I was doing my mathematics. And I realized that 29 million monthly for 109 senator comes to about 3.6 billion a month. And I was thinking to myself, if you take away 20 billion from each senator's salary, it comes to about 2.2 billion a month. If you put that 2.2 billion on a road, you are going to get the best road in Africa. Whatever road you put 2.2 billion.
Yeah.
I can't measure the kilometer now. Now, if you have such 2.2 billion for 12 roads in 12 months, you know how many roads you would have tarred in Nigeria.
Yeah.
If you go to the House of Representatives, it comes to about 5.something billion. If you take away, say, 18 million from the House of Representatives and leave them with 7 million. But by the way, if you take away 20 million from the senator's salary, he still has 9 million to take home. If you divide 9 million by 12, it comes to about 700 and something thousand a month. I don't know which professor earns that. So if you take away from the legislators and you take away, say, 3 billion, and you put that on roads in Nigeria, it means by the end of 2 years, we would have tarred all the roads in Nigeria.
So you're saying poor governance is a fertile ground for this, some of this coup?
Corruption.
Okay.
Real corruption. Because if you have poor governance, people can understand with you. And then they begin to think of changing democratically your government so that will bring in more competent people. But if you don't remove corruption, however smart you think you are, whatever government strategies you think you are bringing, and people can see with their eye your ostentatious living and the wastage and the squandermania of government, people will remain dissatisfied and angry. Okay. And any military that wants to cash in on such anger will cash in on such anger, and they will gain popularity and traction with the people.
All right, let's get Dominic from Abuja Network Studio to join this conversation. Dominic.
All right, Sonny Duke, I know having following your discussion with our guests over there in Benin Network Studio, but one thing for sure that I want to agree with you guys there is the level of intelligence and awareness these young officers have in this age. If you look back when we had the first coup in Africa, looking from 1956, thereabouts in that's pre-independence period to this very time we are, you understand that those who have been carrying out this coup, sometimes it's either they lose their life or probably it's a failed coup. And now we are having young officers who have held a elected president down for quite some days now. What the ECOWAS bloc is doing now, like you said, force might not be the right solution to this problem. But my question is this: for how long are we going to wait until the coup plotters come up with this kind of decision to make changes in their country? Have we not gotten to that level that African can, have this kind of a system of government where the military will only want to use dialogue, like we're saying now that ECOWAS should use dialogue, to talk to the democratically elected presidents or the civil rule, that let's do it this way rather than using force? That's just my first question from Abuja, and if our guests there will respond to this before we go ahead.
If you have followed African coup history, you will discover that from about the year 2000 up until the year 2017, we seem to be rejoicing in Africa that coup era was over. Yeah. So it does seem that the military had given the civilian enough time to say, okay, from 1999 when Nigeria transited into civilian rule, and then the continent was celebrating that our coup era is over, let's watch them until about 2017. It was about 2017 again that they struck. And from 2017 till now, we've had about 6, 7 coups in Mali, in Guinea, in what do you call it, Burkina Faso, in Niger, in Chad. Now, so that dialogue he is recommending may have tacitly be held with the civilian governments or with the civilian population to say, okay, let us see what you will do with democracy. If democracy works for Africa, as you tout, that the military is an interregnum and that it is illegitimate and that it is, which I agree with, but let's see what you will do with democracy. And then they gave them that break. And what did they do with democracy? They did nothing with democracy. They messed up democracy. And having messed up democracy, the military seemed to be coming back. Not that we agree that they should come back. And I think he's suggesting a very reasonable thing the military could do. But remember that most of the countries, the moment the army hierarchy decides to say they want to sit with the civilian government to have that kind of conversation, they are all going to be tagged as disloyal. In fact, it will be seen as rebellion against the policies of government. And you can be sure that after the conversation, within the next 1 month, they are all going to lose their jobs. They will be removed from office because they will be seen as those who have tacitly challenged the policies and of government. So when you don't leave room for such flexibility and for such civilized ways of resolving issues, you have this kind of problems that we have.
All right, let's quickly look at a dimension to this conversation, which has to do with the roles, the influence of the Western powers, US, UK, France, and whatever you. Now, this coup has taken place. We have seen the stand that they have taken, pushing Nigeria to lead ECOWAS or lead ECOWAS to reinstall or reinstate the ousted president of Niger. What's your assessment of it? Because it looks like some sort of colonialism is beginning to rear its ugly head, as it were. And then we have seen this axis of coup from Burkina Faso, from Mali to Burkina Faso, Niger, or you can start from Chad, you can start from Guinea. The list is just, increasing, yes.
Now, it is foolhardy, I've said this several times, for anybody to think. The word neocolonialism was used by a Ghanaian, I've forgotten his name, in the early 60s. And then I know how Britain fought that word then. They said it's not in the English dictionary. But the principles of neocolonialism, the interference, economic interference, after they have given empty political states to Africa, they held the reins of the economy because they know that good economy is good politics. Now has always been there. Now go and do your research. CIA, aided by Britain, killed Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana in 1966. It is on record, and these are historical facts, that France has assassinated about 22 African presidents since that period till now. So they have never really left. What you are seeing now is tension in the global north because of the war. Africa must now be kept the market that it is. And then they pretend on what they think is called civilized governance, which is democracy. But this coup and counter coup, what happened to Thomas Sankara? It came out. Thomas Sankara was killed by a different government. Now, I have my strong suspicion about John Magufuli of Zimbabwe, who stood against COVID and refused to accept external aid and was going to develop, internal solutions. And then suddenly the young man dies. So it's been there, the stranglehold of the West over Africa and the docility of our African head of states. Our own Nigeria here, we know the deals that have been made with IMF, the devaluation of the Naira, the removal of the subsidy, and the floating Naira in the international market and all of that, were the IMF condition. These are the negotiations our president made to have become president of Nigeria. So the point is that we have refused to develop indigenous African governments. We have refused to develop indigenous African-style economy. We have refused to, because we have destroyed our educational system, so we cannot produce experts to build industries, to build machinery. We have to depend on them for all of this, and if they have to give it to you, they negotiate.
And
that negotiation, yes, that is how they don't come out open. That is what we call neo-colonialism. They negotiate with you and give you conditions. And African nations are you know, what do you call it, docile, helpless and powerless. They shouldn't be if their citizens were educated. Because if their citizens were educated, they will be aware of international politics. And they will stand with their government to say, reject this. We are ready to suffer with you until we develop our tradition.
These young guys who are coming on stage,
they are aware of all of this.
Is this a response to these realities that you just highlighted?
They have had a lot of discussion with the civilian populations. These young military guys, have interacted with them. They have knowledge of political science, economics. They have knowledge of strategies. They are like civilian graduates, university graduates. And then they have the military training to add to it. They are aware of international politics. So they have had conversation with the civilian population. And they are tired. Everybody is tired. Even if we are saying the civilian government or democratic government is the best for the nation, I sit here, I'm tired. The entire country is tired. People are looking for solutions. They are looking for alternative ways. Because these people have not provided any alternative ways. They are not sitting to think of alternative. I've just given you an example. As small as that is, it will cause a revolution in Nigeria. If the Senate will say today that they will give 20 million of their salary and take home 9 million, and it will cause a revolution. Nobody will be able to carry out a coup here. People will begin to know that the government is not sensitive to the plight of the people. What are they doing with 29 million naira a month? And they begin to apply that into roles. They are sitting there and they are talking. And they are talking and they think that the people are food or that they have the machinery. I'm happy that the president is being embarrassed now by small Niger. That we think when Buhari was the commander in the north, I think in Jos also, and my Tessine came into the country, Buhari chased them into Niger Republic. In fact, he had to be called back by the president. That's how powerful we were. But you can't do that now. Things have changed. The politics have changed. The situation have changed. The loyalty from the people have changed. So that is why you find people on the streets. Why are they not doing that? Why are they not taking measures? You are holding on to your ostentation. You are holding the state resources. And you are living in such ostentation. And you are taking to the people. The people have got, they are more intelligent than you are in most cases. Okay. So you think that people will stay like that. You are pushing them to the wall. They will react.
All right.
And when they react, this is what you get.
Dominic is still with us in this conversation to engage the issues and take them further. Dominic, yeah.
Of course, the words in the issue of bad governance are lead to what we're seeing in Niger. If you've been following this development as at yes, this mass protests in Niger Republic, a stadium where civilians are gathered to support the military junta, this time as the coup plotters, when they said they are going to shut down their airspace against any invasion by either the ECOWAS, ECOMOG as they've been called, or invasion into the country. And we saw that. What I want to know is that if the people of Niger have come out in that mass to protest yesterday, said, yes, we are in support of what our military support, or we are against any invasion of military forces into our country, it goes to tell you that they are not in good terms with the president who is hosted. If I'm towing the same line with our guests. Secondly, I want to still put this to you. You talked about the Nigerians and all that. Why we give this situation to them that they actually advise the president to look the other way, probably going the diplomatic way, and see how we can resolve this issue. Now, if the Nigerian civilians will toe the lines of Niger by, look, we are not calling for revolution at this time, but holding our governments accountable for wrong decisions they take. Don't you think we'll avoid issues like this in Africa's suffrage as far as ECOWAS is concerned?
Holding governments responsible have been the preoccupations of Nigerians, using all legitimate channels, the civil society. Nigeria has a very vibrant press. They give room for such discussions as public analysts have been doing, like I'm doing here now. So that we have found that the government does not even have a response, a feedback mechanism. And they treat the Nigerian public with disdain. The civil society, who are the watchdog of society, they have information. If government wants information about how the people are feeling, if government wants information about what it needs to do to assuage people's anger, you can get them at the tip of your fingers. From the press, from the civil society, and from individuals who are involved in public affairs. You can get them. And Nigerians have tried to do that, to hold the government accountable. Every time you find that there is a sort of, pressing it a little further, by either putting some pressure that people like Gani Fahimi had tried to do, that government, the state, conspires against him, isolate him. When they cannot plant anything on him, they just render him impotent. And such people keep telling government, I'm doing this for your sake. You have to give the people windows to ventilate. If you don't give them windows to ventilate and listen to their complaints, who did the government consult before removing fuel subsidy the way they removed it? Because it suits the ruling class right now. Those who could protest are now the government. They protested when it was to be removed by Jonathan. Now they are now the government. The people couldn't go into the streets because they would send policemen to shoot them. And even if they went into the streets, as they do in a few places like Edo here, who would listen? Does the government have any record or document any protest and say, okay, what were the grievances? Why these people were on the street? Now come up to say, okay, this is how we are redressing it. You don't find such things. So if the government is insensate and then put themselves in a cocoon and then refuse to get that feedback mechanism from the people through these legitimate sources, it was Awolowo who said it, the quotation I quoted earlier, that when you make peaceful change impossible, you are leaving room for violent change to be inevitable. So people want to discuss with government. Nobody is really interested in waiting until government takes us into a debacle and then we react violently before we begin to. People want to discuss with government. There are many groups, individuals, private organizations that come up with brilliant ideas to solve local problems in local communities, in states, in sub-regional governments, and present it to the governor. And nobody listens to it, and nobody goes to look at the books.
Are you bothered by what seems to be playing out now, in the sense that Africa is facing another big challenge of recolonization? We can look at the case of Central African Republic, where Russia is holding sway, supporting the government in that country, perhaps even against the will of the people. And then there have been talks about the coup plotters in Niger right now aligning with the Wagner brothers and Russia to be able to sustain them, as opposed to the West. What does this portend for Africa?
Repartitioning of Africa. The Berlin Conference repeating itself all over again. Russia is under a stranglehold from NATO forces and is looking for new partners and new space. China has been involved in that diplomatically. China has moved its way into African governments, and they have established heavily and interacted. China's policy of trade is to corrupt the officials, the policy makers. They have done that. So when you hear people, what was dangled before them? What is the advantage of Central African Republic collaborating with China? It's not the Central African Republic, it's the leadership. The corrupt leadership. Africa's leadership has become a curse. It's the leadership. So once the leadership make this on behalf of the people have no say in that matter. They don't subject anything to a referendum or subject it to any votes. Excuse me. The leadership goes to make and size up the country. Just as we have the president here who went to Niger Republic, beat a refinery, unilaterally beat a rail line there, and when they asked him, he said he has cousins there. He took those decisions. And what ECOWAS is trying to do now is fight his battles. We know we are not stupid to know that the government of the day, who is his party, of the same political party with him, wants to protect his interests there. The president that is outside is his cousin. So it is our leadership. They are signing up the country. It is the repartition of Africa again. Now that Russia has entered, in fact, there is no proof that in Mali, it was not the Wagner brothers who did the ousting. There is no proof about that. So that is what Burkina has studied that. I mean, Niger has studied that. So Russia, now what you are going to find is that America will quickly start to come to its territories. Britain want to take its own allies like Nigeria, so it's a repartition of Africa again. And everyone, did Russia not go to South Africa to quickly try to see how it can do at the other end of Africa?
Yeah.
So they know what they are doing. I mean, these are people who sit down and plan this strategy.
I read the post credited to former Liberian President George Weah. I'm sure it was in relation to this coup in Niger and several other coups that are taking place. I mean, Mali, Burkina Faso. The Burkina Faso's case is quite interesting. A lot of agreements signed with Russia, with France. A lot of treaties signed with France. A lot of, partnership and collaboration signed with France. And all of these are not in favor of Burkina Faso. How do you explain a situation wherein many of these countries that were colonized by France, their central banks are in France. So their monies are in France. When they need loans, France takes part of those monies and give to them. And then they pay interest on their money. It's unthinkable. So perhaps in relation to that, George Weah said that the real coup that we need to deal with is the judiciary coup, the economic coup, the political coup, the electoral coup, which in his opinion is the biggest coup. Until we make up our mind to deal with these categories of coup, this military coup is just the least of them. Do you subscribe to this?
Yes. You see, France's case, the old France territory colonized by France, African territory colonized by French, was because the French political philosophy in colonization of Africa was assimilation and integration. We are better. We were not assimilated. The black French people are deliberate slaves to France. They can't think outside of France. That is what that policy did to their psyche and mentality. Assimilation. So now what George Weah is saying is that independence, true independence, is to give power to the people. When you take care of those coups, judiciary coup, electoral coup, and so on and so forth, the people will feel that the leadership in place is their leaders. They elected them. Before you can begin to have things like coup and external influence succeeding, the people must either be ignorant or conquered. You cannot conquer a country whose citizens want to retain the government they elected. Because the government is going to get maximum cooperation
from the citizens.
Intelligence reports, and all the support that he will need to forestall that external intervention, which I call external invasion economically. But if it's not popular at home, it's very easy. When Thomas Sankara started his revolution, it was Campore that they used. In fact, I remember when Sankara came to Nigeria and he was told that there is rumor that Campore could plan coup against, and he told the journalist, by the time you hear that Campore is planning a coup against me, it's too late to warn me. Because of how close, and that's what happened. So they just go and look for one pliant, grieving, yes, opposition or even your government.
Or an ally.
Yes, and because you have not got the people, there's no independence in the country cannot develop. There's no sense of pride and nationalism.
Okay.
Yes, they feel like being properties of the Western nation.
Yeah.
It starts from all this our mentality.
The deadline given by ECOWAS has expired.
Yes.
So what is the way out of this logjam? I mean, we heard efforts made by ECOWAS sending delegations to Niger, President Tinubu sending another delegation to Niger. They couldn't have any conversation, discussion with the coup plotters. I mean, the last was our own Sultan of Sokoto, and leading some other delegations there. They were only limited to the airport. So the deadline ultimatum expired. So what option is there?
If you are going to deal with an individual who is an opponent, you don't operate from your side, your thinking and your mentality and your whatever you have at your disposal. You operate from his side. So I'm thinking for the president, what am I going to be thinking? This big white elephant that has nothing to offer, who call themselves Nigeria, that think that they have the audacity to interfere in my territory. do I have, if we have to fight a war, do I have support? So, all of these things were thought out by him before he took that action. He's aware that the president there is the cousin of our former president. He's aware that Nigerian leading ECOWAS will want to use ECOWAS. How many African ECOWAS countries, how many presidents do you think he's in touch with? You think because ECOWAS gathers, it means the entire president there supports what you are telling them? So the point is, that man is looking at his level of preparedness. He's also looking at the international laws that protects him. He's looking at the international partners that he has made deals with. You are hearing the history of the Wagner brothers. You don't know when he started to discuss with the Wagner brothers. We have not been able to curtail the insurgency in Nigeria. We've not been able to curtail Boko Haram, who come anyway through Niger. Their own president died, the former president, was the president of Chad. That died fighting in Boko Haram, in the war front, and then they put his son there. Now, okay, now, we have not been able to contain all that, and we are going to threaten a sovereign country that have been able to carefully
But we have a more robust, stronger, well-equipped, more financed military capacity than Niger.
Is our military cooperating? Our military will not be so, I don't want to use naive, as to throw themselves into a war that they absolutely have no business fighting. Our military is not going to cooperate with the president. Remember, I have told you that the military of today is not the military of 1960. There are military that know what internet, they know your economy is sub-zero. And then you want to go and finance. If you say ECOWAS is fighting against Niger, for instance, you're talking of Nigeria fighting against Niger. It is Nigeria that will finance everything. You want to go and finance us. So the trouble you will bring to your own country, the pressure you put in your economy, and the devastation you put to your own country, you can yourself, the losses. That's what the military is going to sit down and begin to do their add and surprise, credit and debit. I said the losses we are going to get from this war will be more than the victory. What do we have to achieve in it? Our territorial integrity is not in question. It's not under attack. So why are we going to get ourselves involved?
Well, already, border states are, border states or border local government, border communities are feeling the pangs of the border closure between Niger and Nigeria. But as a response to that, we heard that Niger has also opened its borders with its closest neighbors, the likes of Libya, Mali, and Burkina Faso, and Chad, and the rest of them. But there's a lot of sanction coming on heavily on Niger. I wonder how they can really survive all of this. Well, let's get a final word from Dominic from Abuja Network Studio.
Look, the last questions that you asked to your guests was actually what was in my mind. I was looking at the strengths of our military. I know they've been overstretched. Looking at the internal security we've been trying to resolve for quite some time, and deploying them to a war in Niger, I don't think will be in the best interest of the country. The economic factors also plays out because of Nigeria is a big brother there. We're going to be funding all these things. Like your guest said there, we've not really seen any foreign country that say, okay, fine, Nigeria, we're going to support you, go into all and all that. But good enough, we've realized that it's not the best option. More discussion. Probably before the end of the day, we might be hearing another decision from the ECOWAS sub-region, what they intend to do going forward, just like your guest advised that the president should have a that approach. But be it as it be, we just hope that peace back to jail. So much of these foreigners, the foreign interests in this country, like you said, it's another new way of colonizing Africa. If we don't fight it, it means we're going to go back to those olden days where we are answerable to these foreign countries.
Right. Thank you, Dominic. Very useful and robust insight there. Chris, I want to thank you again for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we stay TMI, beautiful Monday morning. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with the rest of the program. But we want to support every action that will bring about dialogue with the current Nigerian authorities who have taken over governance and government in that country. A military option, outright military option, may not be the best. Even the Western powers who are encouraging Nigeria and other countries that constitute ECOWAS, about 15 countries actually, to push for reinstallation of the ousted president. They may just push us on, lead us on, and when we are neck deep into the war, they'll turn their back. I mean, that gives them room for their contractors and businessmen to sell arms and do all kinds of things. So President Bola Tinubu should listen to the voice of reason, continue to engage the coup plotters, and find an amicable resolution of the crisis. We know that the former president, or the ousted president, has been arrested, is in detention, and even while in detention is able to make some communication and all of that. But again, the most interesting part of this whole thing is that in the streets of Niger, there seems to be excitement and support to what has happened. And if there's anything to go by, it means that we have to take a cursory look in terms of our actions and inaction in engaging the new leaders of Niger, so we don't escalate the issue. Some unconfirmed sources have talked about the fact that in Niger, several instances where the military in the front line, they are attacked and killed by insurgents. When they are able to apprehend some of these insurgents, and they also want to do what is needful, they are told to take permission from the French military forces on the ground. That's not healthy. So there are a couple of allegations that are there in the public space as to why the coup plotters did what they did. But if a substantial part of the populace, a mass of the people, are in support of what has happened, what is more democratic than that? I leave that question for my opponent to answer. It's the TMI on the ITV network. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with you in a moment. Don't go away.